recording. And so just so you know, this recording will be available. We usually try and post it by the end of the day, but certainly no later than Monday. So don't feel like you got to copy down copious notes. We also have a couple of handouts available for you to make kind of keeping track of all of this a little bit easier. Thank you so much for joining us this morning for our tips on keeping your grade center organized. I'm pretty sure you know all three of us, but I did want to give Cameron and Mark a chance just to make sure they don't have any announcements, or if you want to take a quick second to introduce yourselves.
No announcement.
Well, hey, I'm Mark, everybody. Everybody can know me.
And I'm Cameron.
And I'm Ashley. I feel like everyone knows me. I send a lot of emails. So this morning we're going to be talking about little things that you can do to help keep your grade centers a little more organized. I'm going to go ahead and start by sharing a quick file with you guys. Unfortunately, I can only share one file at a time. So if you want to download this, you can. We also post these in DEIR, and I post announcement links that have all of these things in here, but this is just kind of to give you a chance to preview this, and if you want to download it or take a screen capture, you can. So I don't know about you, but I found the full grade center very confusing when I first started teaching at Augusta Tech. I didn't understand why it was called a grade center when it really just seemed like it was a grade book. I couldn't figure out the difference between points and percentages. I could never figure out what all of the dashes and lines and marks meant. And so this is just an opportunity to kind of overview what those things mean and to give you a couple of quick tips. So I don't think that I can share the file on the screen and the my screen at the same time, so I'm going to temporarily stop that. And again, it's over there on the right if you want to go back and grab it from the shared file section. So I want to start by covering with you some basics of like what the symbols you're seeing inside of the full grade center actually mean. And if you'll give me a second, I'll set up our little inception screen. All right, so what I'm going to be showing you is the grade center from an imaginary class. So these are all, fictitious grades, but I do think it's pretty comparable to the experience that I had as an instructor. And so I had my gradebook set up in a really interesting way where I used a point system. And so students were working towards 1,000 points. And 1,000 points was the equivalent of a 100. And I had assignments scaled where like 5 assignments together might count towards a single assignment. And what happened as a consequence of that is I would scroll over and I'd have so many grades that it was almost impossible to keep track of all of this stuff. Or sometimes I've struggled to figure out, all right, why is my discussion board grade not updating? Or why are students seeing something I don't want them to see? So just a couple of quick things before we begin that you want to keep in mind about this grade center. If you have things in your grade center that you do not want your students to see, the easiest thing to do is to click on those items, hit edit column information, or excuse me, not edit column information, and scroll down to hide from students. When you hide something from a student, you still see it in your full grade center, but they do not see it when they look on their end. And so do you see how right here I have this red or orangish slash? That's letting me know that that's something that I see that students don't see. So this particular column, when everybody does their initial Blackboard onboard training, we have to keep track of your divisions. So I just made up a column where I could type in a person's division. Now, I don't need Caleb to know that I'm putting him in this cyber division. And so what I've done is I've turned that off. And as you can see right here, I'm a student in this class. So I just wanted to show you what a student in this class would see. So we see here that the first item is this fall 2020 review. Then they see BB Essentials, and then they see something labeled May 2020. While over here in my instructor view, I have this total, I have the division, I have the status, I have the notes. So anything that's got this slash is something that the students don't see. Now, by the same token, there are some things that I don't want to see in my grade center. I give my students lots of practice activities, and those practice activities do not count towards their final grade. They're not something I really need to be monitoring. It's just to give the student the opportunity to like maybe familiarize themselves with the test format, especially when I have students who are anxious about it. Sometimes I just want to give them, hey, here's a practice. You can see what this experience is going to be like. I don't need to see that in my grade center. Go back to that edit column information and click hide from instructor view. And what that's going to do is it's going to remove that column. So where before I had a column that was labeled course requirements, now that column is gone. I think a lot of people are anxious to do that, right? Because we do it and we're like, oh my gosh, did that delete that grade? What do I need to do if I need that grade back? I am a proponent of never delete it. I would much rather be able to go back and clean up an Excel spreadsheet than to have to go back in and try and replicate those grades or remember what the assignment was. So when you do that, when you hide it from your instructor view, that does not delete it. And it does not remove it from the student view. So be mindful that students can still see that unless you turn it off for them. If you'd like to find where that information is, then you need to go to manage and then go down to column organization. So if you had the opportunity to grab that first file that I shared, that's really what this is telling you how to do. And so when I scroll down and I'm looking at this column information, what you're really seeing is an overview of everything that is in your grade center. And if something is in traditional text and it's dark, so it's not italicized and it's a darkened text, that means that you're seeing it in your grade center. This course requirements acknowledgement is light gray. It's also italicized and it has the word hidden next to it. So that means that I'm not seeing it in my grade center. And if I decide, hey, I do need to see that information again, you can just click on this. You want to go up to the top or the bottom of your screen. It's in both locations. And we can select show me that column. And so now when I go back to my full grade center, it's going to appear in the full grade center again. And so that brings this course requirements back. So it doesn't disappear, or it's not deleted, it's just disappearing from the view to make keeping the gradebook organized a little bit easier. So the other thing that I find myself struggling with when I have like this all-intensive grade book is, you know, if I want to see the students' grade in my class, by the time I'm, 5 columns over and I'm looking at something like the attendance, I can no longer see their actual grade in the course, and that for me gets very confusing. And when you're working with an Excel spreadsheet, you have the opportunity to freeze the rows, right? So you have that same similar function inside the full grade center, and it's located in that same column organization field. If I want to ensure that something stays at the front of the grade center, all I need to do is drag it above this dark bar. And so in my case, I want to always know what your grade is in the class. Like, I don't care where I'm at in the grade center. So I'm just going to drag it up there, right? So now it doesn't matter how far I scroll across my grade center, a student's grade is always going to stay right where I can see it. And if you're looking at this going, what's this duplicate column? I'm going to show you in a second. And so that can be a very easy way to keep track of important things, like the last time the student accessed the class, what their full grade is. If there's like a very important or definitive assignment that you want to freeze right there, you can. A lot of the times when I create columns like this that have students' nicknames, if I'm reviewing my grade center before class, I just leave their nickname right there. So I have this quick reference that, Caleb likes to be called Cal or something like that. And so you do have the option to freeze those things in place, to hide things from students, to hide them from yourself. And those can always be really useful in making sure that what you need is easily accessible for you. 90% of what you can do that has to do with organization in your grade center is actually under this Manage tab. And I want to go back and revisit some other things that this column organization can do. So we've already covered that it can show us or can show or hide options. It can also help you to organize options. So when you create items in your classroom, or when you're creating columns in your grade center, all of those columns always default to the far right side of your grade center, or they're going to be at the very end of it, right? And sometimes it's the middle of the semester, I create a column, I don't need it after my final exam, I need it to be in the middle of the semester. You can drag and drop any of the items here to reorder them. So for example, this attendance, if this is something that I really want to keep at the forefront of my grade center, I can just drag it up to the top of the grade center, and that's going to change its location both on my end and on the student's end. So if you're trying to bring something to the forefront for the students, we can see now that that attendance is here. Sometimes we get emails from instructors that say I moved it and I don't understand why it's not moving. That probably has to do with how you've sorted your columns. So if I want the drag and drop feature to work, those columns have to be sorted by layout position. If I change them to something like points possible, notice that that column disappeared. So if you want to be able to drag and drop, you have to leave the layout position enabled. And that's something that you change on your end that also affects how students see it on their end. So just be very mindful of that as you're playing around with those functions. So I don't know if you all remember, but, well, I'm certain we all remember the rapid transition. But if you've looked back at your grade books prior to the rapid transition, you may have wanted to make a note of here's where the transition started, right? Here are all of the assignments before, here are all of the assignments afterwards. When I look in this grade center, you see how here it says August 2020, and it's pulled this fall 2020 review that was due on August 21st of 2020, and it separated it out from everything else in my grade center. This is something that you can set up for those really important reporting periods in the semester. So, you know, maybe you have a midterm and you want to see all of students' assignments before the midterm separated from all of the assignments after. Maybe you want to see everything before the last day to withdraw separated from everything else. Those are called grading periods, and they're actually really easy to set up. So as we move on to the next option, if you go underneath this Manage tab and you select grading periods, it gives you the option to use what I would consider a wizard to set up options. So you get to name this whatever you want. You can pick the range for the date. So if you know that, hey, spring break starts on April 1st, I want to see everything before April 1st, you would plug in those dates here, and then you select this option to associate this with the grading period. And what that's going to do is if you've set up due dates, and I don't want to do it in this particular gradebook because I've already got one set up, but what that's going to do is it's going to say, hey, anything that falls within that range, we're going to make its own separate little category right here. And if you ever want to turn that off, you can just go back in and delete it, and it'll automatically wedge everything back together. So those are just really useful things when it comes to kind of the basics of column organization. A lot of the times when we're going through these sessions, we try and kind of reserve Q&A sessions for the end, but because we have a little bit of time, I do want to stop right here very briefly to see if anybody has any questions about the column organization, turning columns on and off, or dragging and dropping columns. All right, I'm going to interpret that silence as no, you don't have any questions.
I have a question about, Ashley.
Okay. I can.
I had a question about the grading periods. It seems that when I copy a class over, the grading periods copy as well. It's not a problem for me to like delete last semester or delete last year. I was always afraid to delete those, and I always created new grading periods.
So it's perfectly fine for you to delete the grading periods in the new course. And if you want to delete them in the old course, that's fine as well. You can always go back and add them back in if you need to. But those are really for you. So students will see like a highlighted area to represent the grading period, but that's not something that we're going back and looking at. That's not something that's gonna, you know, mess up or delete anything in your gradebook. It's just creating those sections for you.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, so the next one that I want to share with you, or the kind of the next thing that can really, I found this transformative. If you're colorblind, it might not be the best tip for you, but you can actually color code your gradebook. And there are two features within this color coding that you can use. So again, I'm sticking kind of this worksheet up so you can see we've already got this information available for you. You want to screen grab it, you can. I will leave it in the file share, but I'm going to go back to sharing my screen. And so for me, because I had so many items in my grade center, and for those of you who I'm meeting in this new role as a distance ed coordinator, I was an English teacher. So I taught English and humanities, which meant I was getting a ton of essays. And it always felt like I couldn't finish grading one essay before the next essay was due. And I wanted to make sure that, hey, have I gone in and actually graded all of these? Have I accidentally missed something in the grade center? So you can enable color coding to tell you two things. The first thing that you can use it for is to tell you the status of an assignment. So if I have something where, let's say if it's in progress, meaning the student has started it, but they haven't finished it, I'm going to make those things yellow. If it's something that needs grading, I'm going to make that red. That's an alert for me. I need to go back in because I'm holding up the student's progress. If it's something where the student was exempt, maybe you got 100 on the practice test, I'm going to exempt you from the quiz. I'm going to give those things a green. When you are selecting these colors, make sure you check this apply option down here. It'll make your life a lot easier. So that's going to tell me the status of the assignments. I'm going to temporarily delete this criteria just so we can, so it doesn't create confusion. It's super important that you click this enable grading color codes option, actually activate this. When I do that and I click submit, what it will do, and I probably don't have anything that needs grading in this class. Yeah, I don't. Let me go back in here and exempt a person real quick. So I'm going to exempt Caleb from this assignment. Do you see now that it's going to color code that for me? That can be really helpful if I've gone in and actually, if I had actual assignments in here, these are all grades I manually entered. But if I wanted to go, hey, let me see, is this actually an assignment that's graded? Is the student missing work? So the other thing that this can do is it can let you very easily see when students are failing an assignment. Anything below a 70% in my class, I would consider failing. And that for me is a red flag that I need to reach out to the student. I need to let you know, hey, have you realized how much stuff you're failing? Because the students don't see these color codes. All they're going to see is the numeric representation of their grade. So if you hit this add criteria button at the bottom, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say any grade that's less than a 70%. So any person who's got anything less than a 70, I want to see that grade. And what I'd like to see that grade displayed as, let's go with blue. I want a blue background and I want white text because blue on black is very difficult for me to read. And you actually see the preview of it right here. I just happen to know that the color code for this is FFF to get the white text, and I'm going to apply that. So now any person who failed the assignment, I'm going to see their grade like that. And when I go back, this for me makes it a lot easier for me to see students who I need to go back and reach out to, right? Now I do want to point something out to you that could be potentially very useful. Sometimes we display grades in a way that can be confusing to students. So I'm actually going to take this totem column and I'm going to drag it next to this one real quick. I'm going to try to. Hand-eye coordination isn't the best. Now, what I want you to see when this happens is that this 98 is definitely above a 70. So why is that color coding marking this as a failing grade, right? And what's happening here is that this is set up as a score and this is set up as a percent. And sometimes the easiest way to make clear to yourself whether or not the student is failing is to hover over the title of the column, and you'll get this information in this Grade Center bar area right here. So what I can see is that 98.66, that's 98.6 out of 1,502 points, which absolutely is a failing grade. So if you are using percentages on your syllabus, use percentages in your full grade center. If you're using points on your syllabus, use points in your full grade center, both to avoid confusion for the student, but also to avoid confusion with the tools that you might use. Sometimes it's just easier for me in terms of the math of my grade center to actually use two display columns. And so right now, this is set up to show me just the points. But if I wanted to see the points versus the percentage, I could go back to edit column information. And when you see this secondary display option, that's actually what that's telling you. So a score is kind of the pure, the percentage weight options. I'm going to say, show me the score, but also show me what percentage that score represents. Now, the great thing about this is, as I said, my background's in English. Math is not my favorite thing. And so this does the math for me, right? I can see that 98.6 represents a 61%. Students don't see this. Students will only see the primary display option. But kind of the easy workaround is to make sure. And the reason that Caleb's math is slightly off is because, remember, I exempted Caleb from an assignment over here, so that assignment's not being factored into his grade. But this makes it a lot easier for me to see who's failing, who's passing, who do I need to reach out to. All right, so for the sake of clarity, I'm going to go back in and turn my color coding off. And to turn the color coding off, if maybe I just don't want to see the failures, I can go back in and delete this. But if I wanted to take all of the color coding off, just click that check mark. That's going to turn it off for the entire grade book. And that never downloads. So if you're a person who says, hey, it's the end of the semester, I need to download this to keep a record or to submit to my dean or something, that just stays in Blackboard. So none of that information is going to leave the grade center. Any questions about that before I move forward? All right, so
Ashley.
the last thing that I wanted to share with you guys was actually
Ashley,
yes.
my question, where are the files located? I would like to download them, but I'm not a computer whiz, so.
Over here on the right-hand corner, if you click work offline and then select download, that will automatically download. Well, it defaults to your full grade center, but if you just wanted a select column or a select time period, you click submit and then this download option, and it automatically downloads as an Excel spreadsheet. Excuse me, I almost said
Right.
Excel
I know
file.
how to download the gradebook. I'm talking about the files that you're sharing with us.
So it should be over here on the right-hand side of the screen. And if you're not seeing them there, I can definitely just immediately email them to you when we're done with this. But they should be over there on that right. So down at the bottom, there's the chat option, there's the attendance that shows you everyone, and then there should be an option that's showing you the files that I'm sharing.
Okay. Nothing is in mine.
I will make sure that I email these to you when we're done then. I'm not sure another way to get them to you. And it might be because I'm bouncing between sharing my screen and sharing the files, but I can't share them both at the same time.
Okay, because Sonia Burns just said they're not there either. So
yeah, I'll look into that, but I'll make sure that you guys get these.
thank you.
All right, so the final tip I wanted to share with you guys was a smart view. Full disclosure, I was no longer teaching when I figured out how these smart views worked. And I certainly wish that I had known what they were. It was one of those things that was just so easy to ignore in Blackboard that I never paid attention to it. So a smart view, when you look under your full grade center, by default, you'll see assignments and tests right here, but these are smart views. And what those smart views do is they allow you to click on them and to automatically see things that fall within the smart view. Now, this particular smart view is just showing me everything in the class that I have labeled with the category assignment, but smart views can actually be helpful in a variety of ways. So to find them, you click manage, then you go down to smart views. Now, what could you use a smart view for? Maybe I want to see all of my students' tests in one place. I could use a smart view for that. Maybe I want to see all of their discussions in a single area. That's what a smart view can do. A smart view can also do things like show me everybody who failed the first test in a single location. For me, after about 2 years of teaching, I noticed that students who failed the first test in my class, that was a really good indicator that a student might withdraw from the class. And so what I wanted to do is pay a little bit more attention to those students and kind of give them guidance. Like, you need to go to the tutoring center right now. I'm suggesting to everyone that they go, but this isn't a suggestion for you. You got to do this so that you can pass this class. So if we click the Create Smart View option, you can name the Smart View whatever you'd like to name it. The description is completely arbitrary. You can't see it in Blackboard. It's really just you. It's the selection criteria that really matter. So the course group will let you see either people that you have labeled in groups or places where you've allowed a student to self-enroll in a group. At the beginning of the semester, I know I'm going to have a student who has accommodations. I get those emails from Carissa Wright Davis all the time. And so what I just did in my class is I created a group. I called it accommodation. If I need to give students time and a half on a test, instead of going in and individually giving every student time and a half, I just give the entire group time and a half on the test. If I wanted to see, hey, how are my students who require accommodations doing in the class, this view would show me everyone who I put on the accommodations team. It can also be useful for like group projects. So if these 5 people are on a group project and I want to see how they're doing in the class, I can just look at that group's grades. Performance will measure how they are performing against a single item. So when I want to see how a student who failed the first test, what all of their other assignments look like, that's what performance will do. So what I'm going to actually do is I'm going to select performance just to show you as an example. And I'm going to go into every person who has a, let's see, I'm going to go back to that course requirements form. And your names will not be nearly as confusing as the ones you see here, but this is just because I did a bad job naming these. Actually, we'll use the social presence acknowledgement. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say any person who has a score of less than 5 on that assignment, I want to see in a performance view. Oh, I got to give it a name. So if I just name this like this, I'll be able to go into my grade center and see it. But do you see how here they're labeled as like little subcategories of the grade center? In order to do that, you have to click favorite. So I'm going to add that as a favorite. And now we're going to see the ta-da group pop up over here. And when I click on this ta-da group, apparently everyone passed that assignment. So that's going to show me that there's nobody who failed the assignment I just labeled. To continue with the smart views, the other things that these smart views can do is they can show you the individual users. So maybe I just have like 4 or 5 students that I'm concerned about. I can go in and look at those by users and just pull those people's names over. Category and status is going to look at things like all of the assignments or all of the students who have exempted an assignment. And then these custom queries allow you to build what you want to see. So maybe I want to look at every student who failed the first test and also is on in group 2. That's what this custom query would allow me to build. I will warn you that these are a little complicated, right? So if you're having difficulty with these, absolutely reach out to the distance ed office. We'll be happy to kind of walk you through these things. Just for now, to give you a better idea of what this actually looks like, I'm going to say that Caleb is on a team. So I'm going to select Caleb. Actually, I'm going to select Caleb and I'm going to select Reginald. And I'm going to put them in their own group. So I'm going to call them group 2. I'm going to add them as a favorite. Because I'm selecting all columns, it's going to show me everything that Caleb and Reginald have. If there was just like a specific set of columns that I wanted to see, I could select those. But now, when I go to my grade center and I click group 2, all I'm going to do is see all of the grades for just Caleb and Reginald, nobody else's. I've also found that this can be really useful when I just need to see a single individual's grades. When I want to see a more filtered view of an individual's grades. So if I just want the people that are on this team, I can absolutely see them. If I just want to see Caleb's grades, I can hide every other row. And this sort of makes it a little bit easier for me to narrow down my thinking. So here's how everyone in the class did. Here's how the people in group 2 were doing. And the people in group 2 didn't do really well on this assignment. And then maybe I just want to look at an individual in group 2. So I noticed that, all right, Caleb did really badly on this assignment. So let me go back in and maybe reach out to Caleb, or maybe talk to his teammates about, hey, what can we do to better support Caleb? And if you want to see everybody else's views again, then you just go back and you click show all rows, and that'll show everybody in the full grade center. All right. So if you find yourself not wanting these, or you get too many of them, going back and deleting them is also really easy. You can go back to those smart views. If all you want to do is turn them off, you just click this star, and that's going to remove them. So I'm just going to go back in very quickly and unselect all of these stars. And we'll see now when I go back to my full grade center. Apparently I missed the group summer reviews, but the rest of them are gone. And those don't disappear, so they stay there. They also copy forward into courses, which again is one of the reasons I went and just made a group for my accommodations. It automatically put all that information for me. I did it once, and now it's something that I have as a tool every single semester. So do we have any questions about the Smart View feature or how Smart Views work? All right, so that's all that I had to cover with you guys today. Are there any particular features of the Grade Center in general that anybody had any questions about, or anything that you wanted to ask before we end today's session?
I have a question.
I can barely hear you, Charles. There we go. What's your question? Charles? Okay. Charles, can you type your question? Because I can't hear you. All right, so I'll follow up with you via email then. All right, well, does anyone else have any questions before we end today's session? Before I let you go, I would love to get your feedback on what you found useful, what we can cover in the future. So I'm sending you guys a link. We do these surveys at the end of all of our sessions. It should take you all of 2 minutes to fill out. We would greatly appreciate it. I'm also going to go ahead and email you guys right now, since we're having problems with the file sharing function, a copy of those files so that you'll have them. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. You can always send us an email to distanceed@augustatech.edu. We hope you guys have a super productive Friday, and we will see you next week.
Thanks, Ashley. Thanks, everyone, for being here.
Thank you, guys. Have a great Friday.
Thanks, Ashley.